Get started here in a minute.
All right, everybody, welcome to our first webinar for the Child Care Capacity Accelerator. My name is Sarah Gardner. I'm going to be supporting the chat and the questions today, and we'll turn it over to Lucas here shortly, but just want to go through some housekeeping. We're going to ask everyone to stay on mute to input all of your questions that you have in the chat. That helps just streamline the process, and then I will facilitate those questions asking to Lucas for his responses. Later on in the presentation, we will have quite a bit of time for questions, so we encourage you to drop them in at your convenience, and we will get through as many as we can. This is being recorded, so both the recording and some of the responses to the questions will be posted on the Accelerator website. We'll be dropping all of those links in the chat as we go. So if you have any questions, you can direct message the CPPR cabinet or just put a message in the chat and I will be keeping track. So thanks everybody for joining, and I will turn it over to Lucas.
Thank you, Sarah. I want to thank all of you. First of all, thank you to those who submitted an LOI. Thank you for those who are here taking time with us this afternoon, or those who will watch this later. Most of all, thank you all for serving children, families, and your communities. You guys, this is such important work, and it's folks out in communities serving children and families that are doing it, and we're grateful for that. I am the grant officer for this exciting funding opportunity. I've been on the job for about 5 weeks now, and am really glad to have this opportunity. It is an exciting opportunity to bend the trajectory for many communities by making generational investments in childcare infrastructure. For those of you with capital projects, I want to make a clear-eyed observation. Many of the children who need childcare in your community today will be in school before the ribbon cutting for your facility. You're building something for the future, which is really so hopeful. This is an investment for children you haven't met yet, and hopefully for families who don't even live in your community yet. What an exciting opportunity to make an invitation to new families to join you in your community, to join us here in Kansas to build our prosperous future together, and to make Kansas the best state to raise a family. I want to take a minute before we get into the nuts and bolts here. I spent 4 years as the assistant city administrator out in Lindsborg, Kansas, and accidentally found myself working on childcare. I was working in economic development, and we realized that without making some real efforts on childcare, it didn't matter much what else we did in economic development. And we intended our project to be a new welcome mat for the community, that when employers were interviewing people, recruiting people into the region, that they would bring them to the new childcare center. We used creative financing in partnership with the local bank and the community foundation to achieve, hopefully achieve. The project's been open a year, so I need to be careful about what I say we did, but the intention was that would be part of our long-term sustainability plan. We used finishes that we think will wear well over the next 50 years. It was a big investment, and we really wanted to spend that extra 5% to have fewer maintenance costs over the years. And we built a facility that we think honors the work being done by the staff. You all know that staff are hard to recruit and retain, and so we wanted to put their enjoyment of the facility into the equation. We had a plan for net positive revenue, both through grants and through tuition, so that year after year, we would be able to pay staff well. And then we were planning for the future with room for expansion and a clear plan for how we could add classrooms on. So that's a little bit of what we did in Lindsborg, and what I hope to share with folks as you're thinking about projects maybe. And now very specifically to this opportunity, the Child Care Capacity Accelerator. If I can operate my PowerPoint. There we are. So today we will go over the accelerator, look a little bit at the online resources that we have, the timeline for the grant opportunity, key elements for the applicants, and then the application itself, and then we'll have lots of time for questions and answers. So the purpose of this grant opportunity is to support you all, community-based applicants, to build or make capital improvements that create additional licensed childcare seats. And that's really the key piece of this, that we are looking for projects that add net new seats, that align with health and safety requirements and address systemic challenges to sustaining those childcare seats. Outcomes that we hope for: increased number of licensed childcare facilities, increased recruitment and retention of childcare providers, increased number of licensed childcare seats, and an improved community ratio of licensed childcare. So there's lots of resources, and hopefully you've had time to look at the website, but it's allinforkansaskids.org/communities. There's also allinforkansaskids.org/accelerator. And you will find there the links for this webinar series, the recordings of the webinars, the FAQ documents. And I'll say a few things about the FAQ documents. We need your help to build those FAQs. And that is why we are directing folks to submit technical assistance requests through the website. We would ask, it may feel a little bit clunky to you, there was a capacity to ask for a phone call, and we pulled that capacity because we really want you to take the extra minute to submit a written question that we can respond to, but also possibly add to our FAQ. Certainly, we're happy to make a phone call as part of that as well, but want to generate a good FAQ for everybody, because if you've got a question, probably other folks do too. The RFP guidelines are there. The link to the online application, the Kansas Common App, is there. We've got community planning and data resources, the timeline, and yes, the technical assistance portal. So additional webinars, and certainly want folks to come with questions. We may add more, depending on what we feel we're hearing from folks, but right now we've got 3 more webinars planned. We've got next Tuesday, the following Friday, and then the Thursday after that. Please don't feel, I've sat in your chair. Please don't feel like you have to attend all 4 Q&A sessions because that will improve your application. That we're not keeping track in that way. So if you feel like you have a good grasp on what you're doing and you don't have questions, feel free not to attend those additional sessions. Certainly, if you've got questions, we'd love to see you in the webinars. The RFP went up on March 10th. The applications are due May 15th by 5 p.m. here in our time zone. And that, I'll tell you what, I know that for most of us, that's a tight timeline. In my office, that feels like a really tight timeline. There are other folks who say, I needed this money yesterday, can't we please get it going faster? So those are some of the tensions that are built into that, but it is a May 15th deadline, and we hope to announce awards then by the end of June. and would be able to start funding, July or August. It would be, we would, as soon as we get those awards announced, we should be able to move forward very quickly. So for the applications, we're looking for an identified single fiscal agent. And this is particularly important, I think, for communities that are looking at maybe grouping some projects together. You need to have a single fiscal agent who's going to be responsible for the project and my interlocutor. We are looking for documented community support and local collaboration in the decision-making processes. And this can look like different things. Certainly a lot of folks have access to a communities in action process with Child Care Aware, and we're excited to see what those develop. I know that other communities, have been working at this at the county level or at the city level, and have a good have put together a good process that has lots of local decision making involved in it, and so we're looking to see that. Want to see an identified community champion throughout the funding agreement. And that's somebody there local who is helping to carry the project through. We're looking for not less than a 25% project match. And only 10% of the total project could be in kind, whether that's a land donation or some other piece that you're bringing to the table. Only 10% of the total project can be within the match. Only 10% of the total project, 40% of the match can be in kind, but we do need some of that match, 60% of the match, to be cash that you've brought to the project. Want to see reasonable costs. When we say reasonable costs, we don't mean that you're doing your very best not to spend any money at all, but also that we're not looking to fund gold-plated projects necessarily. And reasonable costs, certainly, since a lot of this is federal money, want to make sure that we're all being very accountable there. And then procurement policies as well. And I think we've got a model procurement policy up. But we'll look for you to affirm that your procurement policies are in line with federal procurement policies that really just are meant to ensure that public money is not being misused. And then facility documentation as outlined in the RFP. So who should be the lead applicant? Well, that could be a city or county government, an economic development organization, a community-based organization, private entities, and educational institutions. If you are a for-profit childcare provider, you are a private entity. Just to be clear, if you are a not-for-profit childcare facility, you're a private entity as well. You are certainly both welcome to be an applicant. We need somebody, really your champion and your fiscal agent, to have expertise and experience related to overseeing capital grant and community development projects, including the reporting obligations. We need to see an ability to ensure appropriate partnerships to meet full project needs, the capital project, the fiscal piece, connecting with other childcare facilities, early learning program. We need to see that there's, from project inception to getting kids in the building, that there are the appropriate folks involved. We need to know that you can effectively track and utilize data to drive decisions and investments, as well as respond to reporting requirements. And then we want to know that you have support from community partnerships, and that's going to look, that could look lots of different ways, right? But it might be that you're able to say, you know, we've gone before our city council, and they're really excited, and they have given us a letter of support or some sort of some form of support. It could be that, you know, that you can say our economic development organization and 5 churches in town and whatever else have all come around us to say this is a great way to move childcare forward in our community. So the the online application components, we're looking for basic project information, information on your facility, your capacity goals, how many kids do you want to serve, how many hours and days per week, and really weeks per year are you going to be open, and what's your staffing plan. We're looking for at least 3 detailed goals and objectives that are measurable and accountable. You need to be able to tell us that there's actual need for the project. And I'm sorry, I have a tickle. Hopefully this won't just be a disaster as I pop a lozenge in. So, and project need is really difficult, really important. It is one of those things that, as I said right at the beginning, you're building for the future. We want to build, and hopefully we all have a pretty optimistic view of what the future is. In terms of building for the future, we're looking for a fairly conservative project. In terms of your need today, and so if you're in a community where there's a need for 100 slots, if you're working together as a community coalition, our hope is that you're coming up with a plan that comes close to 100 slots. So not overshooting it, but if you're in a community that needs 100 slots, we're hoping that we don't that we see a plan aligned with that need for 100 slots. You need to be able to show us data showing the need for that child care, how it fits into existing community plans, and then what the capital piece of that needs to be. Project readiness. Show us that you are able to do this, that you've already done all the homework on that you've got the collaboration and then also the local leadership to get it done. It also means real explicitly that if you're talking about a capital project, that you control the land where you're going to put it. Because we are, we've got a May 15th deadline, and we're looking to spend this money by not later than September 2026. I say looking to, but we have to spend the money by not later than September 2026. You need to control the land by the time you submit May 15th. That's a huge piece of project readiness. Project impact. Again, telling the story of how it relates to the need for it, that it is that you're adding the right slots in terms of age, and then that impact on families, workforce, and employers. And so that's not only, I tend to talk about, childcare probably needs to be open for 9 hours a day to accommodate a normal 8-hour shift, but you all know the employers in your community. Hopefully they're at the table with you as you develop this. And if they run 12-hour shifts, hopefully we're going to see projects that say we're being responsive to that, so that we're developing childcare that is responsive to the needs of working families. And then project sustainability. Tell us about, and we're going to have innovation here. Tell us about the long-term viability of the project within your community for your workforce, communities, and families. Your funding request needs to include planned or pending funding partners. Again, because this money needs to go out pretty quickly, I don't anticipate that we will fund somebody who comes and says, well, I need $5 million for this project. And I would, we're hoping, okay, I need $5 million for this project, and we'd like the accelerator to do 3.75. So that would be the 75%. We're unlikely to do that. We are wanting to make sure that we spend the money across the state. We want big asks. 2.5 might be doable. And I'm getting really in the weeds and haven't seen the applications yet, right? But what I'm trying to say is we are wanting to fund across the state. And if your project is a big project and you don't have that local support or foundation support to come together to make the full funding package, that gets more difficult. So hopefully you're finding, if you're in Northwest Kansas, you're having conversations with Dane G. Hansen. If you're in a rural county as identified by Patterson Family Foundation, hopefully you're having conversations with them and with your local community foundation to make sure that we've got a full plan of funding. And debt, debt can be part of it, to say we have an agreement with the bank, and the bank is happy to, if we get on my $5 million project, if we get 2 million from the accelerator, the bank's happy to do 1.75. And we have a plan for how that works. Hopefully that was clear as mud. Attachments, there's going to be 3 required attachments for the operations only requests. And this is a big piece of our grant. We're hoping, particularly for facilities that are coming online right now, that need assistance with operations for the first 12 to 18 months, that need assistance with furniture and playgrounds. Those are going to be real good fits for our operations only requests. Anything involving construction will have 10 required attachments. And again, we've got all these links up on the website. And now we'll open it up to questions. Thanks for hanging in with us already for this first 20 minutes.
So far, we've got a little bit of a quiet group, Lucas, but hopefully they're processing. And again, encourage folks to put your questions in the chat, and we'll read this, which makes it easier for those listening to the recording later. So I will start with a question from Megan. If we're putting together a plan for either expanding or starting, but won't have control of the land by the May deadline, are there additional programs like this that would have a bit longer before it's the cutoff date?
So to answer the question you actually asked, or literally asked, yeah, be in touch with Dane G. Hansen, be in touch with Patterson Family Foundation. The state doesn't currently, or the Children's Cabinet and Trust Fund doesn't currently have additional dollars beyond this grant opportunity. If you've already submitted a letter of interest and you have a path to control of the land, please shoot us an email, and I'd like to understand that better. But if you say, we don't have a path to control of the land, then this probably isn't the right opportunity.
So basically, I have an existing center in Lewisburg, Kansas, and there's a empty lot next to me. And so I'm tracking down who owns that lot to be able to expand. So it'd be relatively easy because it's already an existing program, and we would just need to add, a couple additional buildings basically. But I don't know that I would necessarily have control of the land by May 15th at this point.
Right. Yeah, so at this point, it sounds like it's probably not the right fit, but that can change quickly, right? If you can, and you might reach out to, you said Lewisburg, you might reach out to the city and see if they know how they might be able to help you get that process going, invigorate that process.
Okay, next question. Can you clarify what you mean by addressing the possible need? And this is coming from noting that some communities have thousands of slots that they need to fill, and one project could not possibly accomplish that.
Sure, you're absolutely right. So if you are in one of the, and I haven't looked, I know I have some sense of what the need is in a couple of the big counties, but if you're one of the big 5 or maybe big 8 counties, yeah, a project beyond, oh, my screen just went black. Project beyond 300, beyond something like 300 kids and really beyond 150 kids stops making a lot of sense. And we understand that, our reviewers will understand that. But if you're in one of the big 5 counties and your project is going to open up 10 slots, that's not in relationship to the need. Conversely, if you're out in a frontier county, doing something that would provide 10 slots would be transformational. And so hopefully that's an answer. Sarah, does that feel like an answer?
Yeah, I think it's be intentional of your need and transformative in your approach. We have a situation where participants applied for or is applying for other grants that could cover construction and startup for the project they're currently working on. If they were to submit this and the timelines of finding out about the different grants comes at different points, could let's see, use these funds to start the second location we are planning, since this one will add a lot of slots, but not all of them that we need. So basically, could they include that possibility in the application so that it's an option, kind of hedging against other funding that may be coming in?
My sense is that we are some of the least flexible funding available in terms of that. So if you have other funding that might be from one of the big private foundations in the state, I think that they probably have more ability to flex. We are, we really kind of need to fund what we got on paper on May 15th. And that's, that's fair and transparent to the other applicants. I think some of the private foundations have some more flexibility to say, oh, well, you got a big grant from the state. We're able to flex, and that's, folks that are awarded. So Lindsborg was mostly private money. And, so I'd open up the mail and have a check for $1 million. That's not happening with this accelerated grant. You're going to need to submit invoices, and we're going to be releasing funds to you based on those invoices. It's a much it's a much more measured, very publicly accountable form of funding.
Next question, can you explain the blueprint requirements?
There is a requirement for a capital project that you show us what you're going to build. Is that?
Yeah.
And
just so folks know, if you are in the online application, you will see samples of the attachment. So if you're wondering what counts as a site plan, or what counts as a drawing, or what counts as your KDHE approval, there are samples embedded in the online application. Just go to the applications tab and you'll be able to see samples of those. And if you have additional questions after seeing that, please reach out through the TA portal. I'm going to take this question, Lucas. It's from Bonnie, and she's asking about a character or word limit in the Common App. And is there a template that shows what questions are drop downs? There's only one question in the Common App that is limited, and it's because we're asking for a summary that we could use in promoting the projects. Everything else is able for you to express yourself fully. And then if you want to see the full application, there should be a button to generate a PDF so you can see the full application itself. There are several questions that are contingent. So if you select yes, you might have to be answering 2 or 3 other questions. That unfortunately we cannot show in advance. You just kind of have to play around with it, but you will have access to your application to make whatever changes you want to make through that May 15th deadline. So certainly get in there and play around with the application as best you can. Next question, we are a church-based center who's wanting to expand to 2 more locations. Can the church who we are owned by be our community partner, or would we be considered one entity and need an outside community partner?
So I think I would say it's less about need and more about having the most competitive application possible. We have $39 million total that we're looking to grant across the state. And we expect that this will be a competitive process. And so I would say that that you would have a much more competitive application if you have additional community partners supporting your application.
Some grants similar to this have requirements such as 51% of the families using the childcare must be below the poverty level. I know of one grant from Commerce that probably is what you're referring to. Is this one of the requirements for this grant as well?
No. Again, it comes back to competitive. Now, we want to see applications that are serving your community, serving the diversity of your community, but that is not a specific requirement.
Also answer this one, Lucas. This is from Amy asking if we did not submit an LOI, are we still able to apply? Yes, the LOI was not a requirement. It just helps us kind of get our arms around what might be out there as we built the RFP. So if you did not submit a letter of interest, you may still submit an application for the accelerator. Next question, in terms of construction, does that pertain to full new construction only, or would modifications to existing facilities also be considered? We have an existing facility that will need the addition of a kitchen, playground space, a couple of external egresses. Is that considered construction for the purpose of this grant?
I would say assume so. It'll be a question that we'll work through on the back end a little bit on our funding sources, but yeah, assume so.
Let's see, a question, can you clarify how you receive preliminary approval from the fire marshal on a project that is in the construction phase? Experience working in several facilities from start to finish, and fire marshal doesn't normally sign off until you are at inspection phase. And the fire marshal
sort of such an important safety function for us. My understanding is that there is a letter that you can get based on your drawings. And it's not your full fire marshal approval, but that is what we are looking for, is based on your drawings, a letter from the fire marshal. And we will, if that is a pain point, we have a conversation ongoing with the state fire marshal, and it's our understanding that if folks are applying in a timely fashion now for that letter, that it should be able to be achieved by the May 15th deadline.
And we've also received confirmation from the state fire marshal's office and childcare licensing that they're aware of this opportunity and will be working quickly to process what is necessary. And Casey, there is an example of what we are talking about when we say the fire marshal approval letter in the online application. So you can see exactly what that piece of paper needs to look like. Next question, Teresa's from a small rural town. She has families from all 3 towns that come, surrounding towns that come to her center. They've lost some centers, unfortunately. And she's had several calls looking for childcare. She's looking at adding 2 to 3 more classrooms to help with all the closings, and says, would the rural development be acceptable? I'm not sure what that is asking.
Certainly, we are looking for, we're not looking just to fund projects in the big 5 counties. We're not looking just to fund projects in some definition of frontier counties. We're looking to fund projects across the state in all regions. Obviously, with 105 counties, we may not hit every county, but we're looking to spend this money across the state in different kinds of communities that reflect the diversity of the state.
There's a project, funding was in place for our project sponsored by a foundation in which we were building a duplex facility and furnishing it with items needed. Once construction commenced, contractor came back and said there was an increase in construction costs, which is essentially eating into their furnishing budget to get the providers up and running. Would this funding qualify, or would their project qualify for funding to meet that gap?
Absolutely. And if you're that close to being open, which it sounds like maybe you are, hope that you will also think about including some operational support to ensure that that you have, because it takes time to get a full building, and you're going to have to staff whether you're totally full or not, and so hope that you'll include some of those costs in your application.
A follow-up to that, they do not intend to hold the license as the foundation and owner of the facility, but that would be the responsibility of the childcare providers who would utilize the space. And are they still eligible to be the lead applicant? This
is from our friends in Sheridan County, I assume. Your model looks really interesting, and it sounds like maybe we should have a phone call. I wonder if there's an opportunity for you to include some sort of support to the contracting providers as part of your operational ask. But that may, it's a very interesting model, and would like to have a conversation about it. And if it's not Sheridan County, hey, that's fantastic. That model is taking off in other counties. So
there's a question here about collaborating between 2 entities. Our school and county are working on daycare projects, and we have been working cooperatively so far. If we apply through a nonprofit agency, is the fiscal agent the nonprofit entity? Would we need the school and county fiscal information as well?
I don't think you would need it. You wouldn't need it.
Okay. Another question.
As I'm conceptualizing that question.
Yeah, I think it's you have one fiscal agent is essentially what you just need to select is one fiscal agent, regardless of how many partners are engaged in the project. If we have a purchase agreement in place for a property to open another location, but the closing on the property would be contingent on obtaining some of the grant funding for the down payment, would that be sufficient for the application deadline?
I think you meet our baseline expectation. If you get closed, I think it makes your application more competitive.
Can we request funds to develop endowment funds to support childcare initiatives?
Love that model. That was the model in Lindsborg. No, we need you. This is federal money that needs to be spent. Now, I think, get together with your board and think about how you spend this money and have other money maybe that is endowment money, right? But these dollars, you're going to have to give me invoices that you've actually spent to be reimbursed.
Can you talk about some of the equity measures baked into the RFP?
I cannot off the cuff. Sarah, do you want to field that, or do you have? Is there a follow-up question about what exactly, which pieces of the equity measurements they're looking at?
No, I think we would just say that you need to demonstrate need. I think that's the big thing. And as Lucas referenced, that we're looking to fund projects in all portions of the state. We do know that there is unique needs in rural communities. There's unique needs to serve infant and toddlers, particularly. So definitely would love to see projects that can meet the needs of infants and toddlers. And would love to see projects that are innovative when it comes to the unique needs that rural communities have. So parents aren't driving 45 minutes one way for childcare and such. So there's some just conversation around fire marshal letters. So just for everyone who's submitted that, flagging that, and we'll look into that more closely and communicate exactly what we're talking about is needed in the FAQ document, as well as any follow-up that goes out. So appreciate everyone flagging that. Question around KDHE approval of architectural drawings. That's correct, Tamisha. That KDHE will they don't need the construction to be done to give the level of approval that we are looking to see for this application. That sort of site plan is what we're looking for, and there's an example of that in the application. A question.
So, and it won't result in a license.
Correct.
You don't get licensed until well after construction is finished and you filled your kitchen with food and everything. But there's an initial letter.
Could you please expand on the in-kind allowances with examples of what would qualify?
We have not narrowly defined it. In-kind, depending on what the applicant pool looks like, and depending on to what degree your application sort of hinges on it, real estate is a fantastic in-kind piece, right? You've got land, you've got a building. That's real easy for us to put a value on. And so the more difficult it gets to put a value on it, the more difficult it is to put a value on it and to evaluate it as part of your application. But we're not defining it narrowly either. But if you've got volunteers painting, for example, you're going to have to use realistic numbers on that for what the value to the project is.
Would construction that we've already done on the project count towards the match?
Yes, and that wouldn't necessarily have to be in kind. I mean, if you've spent $1 million, you've spent $1 million. That was cash into the project. I'd say $1 million. Sorry, $1 million is a pretty round number. If you spend $100,000, you spend $100,000. So.
A question about the timeline. All project funding will need to be completed by September 2026. Is that correct?
For construction projects, yeah, if we're buying concrete, the concrete needs to be poured and paid for by September of 2026. And actually on the operational grants, the timeline's even shorter. So, which is unfortunate because it'd be great to be able to tell you, we're going to build you a new building and fund your first year operations or help with your first year of operations. That's not how we're set up, because our operational dollars actually have to be spent before our construction dollars.
A question, I live in a small rural area. How do I go about finding community investment partners?
I would suggest starting at your community foundation and looking for assistance there. And they should be aware of this opportunity. I've had some outreach with them. I mean, I can't speak for all the community foundations across the state. I know that in Central Kansas, the community foundations are a huge part of making progress on this kind of project. And then, you know, hopefully you've got a relationship with the local bank, and having some conversations with the local bank about what they see as possible, and you know, your city clerk or city managers, county government, hopefully can play a constructive part.
A follow-up on the in-kind. Do you consider real estate in-kind or cash per your local match guidelines? And this is just referencing that there's 10% cap on in-kind. So what would you consider real estate? In-kind or cash?
I think it probably depends on how it came into the project, which sounds maybe a little bit goofy, but if you've just bought it and you paid fair market value for it, that probably looks more like cash. If it was donated to you, and so we don't really have a fair market value number on it, but we're going to work together to assign a value. You're going to assign a value, and we'll agree that that value is reasonable. That's more in kind.
Can we request operational funding to assist a school daycare we also helped come online last fall? So for context, they decided additional staffing was needed, and so they're trying to assist them in finding funds to help, or is that now considered a past project in the grant timeline? No, that's great. This operational piece of money is for things like that, where you are operating and you know, if somebody had opened a center a year ago with 8 rooms and said, we don't know when we'll fill 8 rooms, but it makes sense to build 8 rooms because construction costs go up year after year. We're going to start at 4 rooms, and you say, we're ready now to make a move. That's a great project for the operational piece. I am not seeing any other questions. Yeah, I'm not seeing any other questions at this time. Okay. I do want to just remind everybody that TA portal, as Lucas referenced, it feels a little clunky at first, but it will help us track where you might have the same questions that other folks do, and helps us develop those FAQs, but you also will get direct access to Lucas to respond. So if you want to have an additional conversation, maybe on a question you asked today and didn't quite get the answer you were hoping for, or the level of clarity you were hoping for, definitely feel free to submit something through that TA portal, and you'll get a connection back very quickly. Absolutely, and I think, you know, in the text box on that TA tool, there would certainly be room to request a phone call. In addition to please asking a specific question to contribute to our FAQ. One other question that just came in. Can we also request funding to make available to new private providers as subrecipients as operational startup assistant grants?
And Sarah, you were more familiar with the back end of this. I'm not real confident of that being
Yeah,
a competitive application, but in terms of that single fiscal agent, that doesn't sound like a good fit for this opportunity.
yeah, I don't think we're intending to make awards that can then be re-awarded out. I think that's where the project has to be described nicely as single fiscal agent supporting slots in these number of different ways, but not necessarily as a direct sub grant out. That would not be something we would be looking to do.
Well, if there aren't more questions, really appreciate everybody's time. Hope you have a happy St. Patrick's Day. And good on you, Sarah, for wearing green.
And we will get
a lot of green on other folks. Kind of. I didn't make the effort either. I looked in my closet and went, I don't really have anything green right now. But
we will we'll put these together in an FAQ and it will be up by early next week, guys. And definitely please engage with us in that TA portal, and really appreciate the questions coming in, and hope that the responses were helpful and you are well on your way.
And thank you again for serving children and families and our state.
All.